I'm Lisa Hernandez.
And I'm Lizzie Getty-Ehrlich.
And we are your hosts for Scholar Strategy Network's No Jargon. Each month, we will discuss an American policy problem with one of the nation's top researchers without jargon. And this month, as we all await the quickly approaching midterm elections, we are talking about the rising number of Black women running for political office.
I cannot believe how quickly these midterm elections are approaching.
Yeah, it seems like we're all close to the end of the year, and our political spectrum is going to change maybe dramatically or maybe not in the next couple of weeks.
You know, it's part of our job to sort of be on top of these things. And I'm not saying that I'm not, but I am saying that I feel like there is so much news happening right now. The idea that there's elections coming very soon, and as always, they can be quite pivotal, feels like something that has sort of escaped my brain a little bit. So I'm excited for this discussion to be grounding, I think, for me in some ways.
Absolutely. And I think, it's really inspiring to hear about how much diversity is in the pool of people running for political office. Like not only diversity as far as, different racial and ethnic makeup in the pool, but also different ideas and sociopolitical spectrums being brought into the office. I feel like it's opening doors for a lot of different conversations that we weren't having in previous years.
Well, that's good to hear. I feel like too many people stop at representation being important because we need sort of visual diversity among our leaders. But it's, and that is important, but it's so much more than that. It's, when you have diversity of perspectives, that strengthens democracy, or that's the theory anyway. You get better lawmaking.
Right. And hopefully you get better turnout when people see different ideas coming around. Hopefully that does inspire a higher turnout this midterm election. Although I guess we'll just have to wait and see until a couple of weeks from now.
Soon enough. And of course, not all of our listeners, but a healthy portion of our listeners are faculty, like the often subjects of No Jargon are. And so they're thinking about this too, not just as voters, but as people who are, charged to varying degrees with the civic participation of their students. So we shouldn't go without mentioning SSN's faculty guide. It's currently on our website, scholars.org. And that's for professors who might want to use it as a resource in their classrooms.
Absolutely. So please go check that out. And I'm really excited for all of you to listen to this wonderful episode that we have today. We had a great conversation with Professor Nadia Brown. Nadia Brown is a professor of government and director of women's and gender studies at Georgetown University. Professor Brown's research interests lie broadly in identity politics, legislative studies, and Black women's studies. She is also the lead editor of Politics, Groups, and Identities. Here's our conversation. Hi, Professor Brown. Thanks for coming on No Jargon.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I want to talk about midterms since it's right around the corner. I was just reading an article the other day published in Bloomberg stating that Black women have been breaking records when it comes to running for office. We've got 133 Black women running for House of Representatives and another 21 Black women running for the U.S. Senate. Are these numbers reflective of a pattern? Have Black women been running more often, or is this just a particularly unique election?
No, this is a pattern for sure. I've written articles, and thankfully I've written articles, and I've said in every article, every election cycle, Black women are running at path-breaking numbers, and that has continued. So what we're seeing is a continuation of Black women running at large numbers. What's new or newer about this election cycle is there are an increasing number of Black women running in various ideological spectrums. So not all Black women that are running would be your quote unquote typical Democrat with the same kind of policy priorities and way of viewing the world. They don't share the same ideologies, backgrounds, generations, policy preferences. Some of them aren't even Democrats. And so the more and more women that are running, it isn't so much a story about the numbers as much as it's a story about the diversity of Black women who are running.
So I do want to talk to you a little bit about your work and one of your latest articles, Destined to Run, the Role of Political Participation on Black Women's Decision to Run for Elected Office, which was published in 2021. You and your co-authors argue that political participation strongly predicts being asked to run and thinking about running for office for Black women. So I want to just unpack the term of political participation, just what falls under this political participation, and just share some details about your findings.
So political participation are all the things that don't fall under or aren't housed under electoral politics. So electoral politics are those people that are serving in office, and political participation are people that are not currently serving in office, but are trying to impact government. So it's things like voting, writing a letter to your, senator, donating money to a candidate. It's protesting, belonging to a grassroots organization, right? These are forms of political participation. But what Lori Frazier, Diane Pender-Hughes, and Jamil Scott and I show in our article is that Black women don't see this disconnect, right? So political science wants to make these very neat definitions of, okay, political participation is stuff that happens outside of being elected official or running for office. And then electoral politics are those people that are seeking office or serving in office. And for Black women, the more you are likely to participate in politics, the more likely you are to then see yourself as a candidate, as to run for office or to serve in elected office. It's not that neat, kind of like tidy binary box. Political science just has like a very warped way of understanding how Black women think, feel, relate to politics. And it's always intersectional. It's always overlapping. Sometimes, it's messy. It's not neat. There are no boxes. There are no binaries. And so in our research, right, Black women are saying, yeah, I vote and I run for office, right? Or I make money and I can see myself sitting as a state senator. There is no disconnect.
Mm-hmm. And it does sound like a fascinating group to study. Is there something that sets their political ambitions apart from other groups that have been running for office?
I think this is a good question because it juxtapose. Oh, am I using too much jargon? Sorry.
No, I don't think so. I juxtapose. I think it's fine. I get it.
Okay, good. Okay. So this is it's a really good question because the literature and how political scientists oftentimes think about Black women are in these two camps of either racialized politics or gender in politics. And there's a small cadre of scholars like myself who are doing work at this nexus, who are really interested in understanding how Black women's identities are intersectional in as much as they are the combined new identity of being Black and a woman, right? So it's making like Black women have distinctly different experiences. And so the bigger question, I think, isn't I think it's much more of a shortcoming of political science literature than what we as scholars know about Black women candidates, more so than like what's actually going on down on the ground. And it's because we've been looking at political scientists, unfortunately, have been looking at women candidates or Black candidates or Latinx candidates, disabled candidates, as if there are these separate groups of people and that you can't all be the same thing at the same time. And that's really the importance of intersectional analysis to see how the totality of someone's identity is impacting how voters respond to them, how they market themselves to possible constituents. And that's the work that I want to do. So I think the silly answer is political science is late, right? But these women have been running, will continue to run, and do so in uniquely their own ways. And unfortunately, political science just didn't have the tools to figure this out. So I can give an example. So I do research on Black women political elites. Most of my work focuses on elected officials, but I do talk with them. I do talk to candidates. I have candidates in the book that I just co-published with Danielle Lemmy, where we look at candidates who are running for office to help understand how they kind of market themselves to the politics of appearance of their voters. But what we find, right, are like these stories of Black women are being told to wait their turn. They're being told that there is room for them at places like Emily's List, but there's not, or to wait their turn as like a Black person running as a Democrat, and not recognizing that there's multiple strengths in being a Black woman. And so now there are new organizations, right, like Higher Heights or Black Women's PAC in Texas that we worked with, who are distinctly organizing and working with Black women as Black women candidates. And these organizations and these women have been working in ways that have always took into account their intersectional identities. It's just political science hasn't. And so my research really is like trying to bridge that gap, right? Of like taking these women's lived experiences and bringing them in a way that makes it legible to political scientists.
And you were mentioning that you study the ways voters respond to these groups, groups that have intersectional or overlapping identities. So can you talk about what you have been seeing, looking at voting behavior when it comes to Black women candidates?
So we know that when Black women run, that they have the opportunities to win, and they need the support of, whether it's their political party, they need support of donors. They oftentimes have the support of voters, and that's the part that really gets overlooked. So Black women are the number one supporters of Black women candidates, and that's huge, right? Because Black women have high turnout rates. Black women are known voters. So when candidates, for example, like Lauren Underwood right now is running for re-election in Congress, her district has been redrawn, and she is now probably going to have a very, very tough battle in front of her. And that's because she's now in a new district where people usually don't turn out to vote. It's not that they're not registered, and maybe it's not that they're just so apathetic, but we know that when Black women turn out to vote, they do so in large numbers and usually for the Democratic candidate, and that Black women are the number one supporters of Black women candidates. And so the issue is, right, they have the support from Black women when they have it, right? But it's how do we mobilize other voters to support Black women candidates? And probably if you've been paying attention to some of the, I'm going to call it made up, that kind of fear tactic rhetoric that's going around Stacey Abrams' campaign for governor in Georgia. It's this idea that Black men don't support Black women, or that Black men are feeling left out by this new wave of Black women voters. And it's so frustrating, right? Because Black men do turn out to vote in high rates for Democrats, right? They peel off a little bit from Black women. That's because Black women's voting rates for Democratic candidates are so high. It's like 98, 96, 94%. So if Black men are voting for Democratic candidates at 90%, 88%, right? That is huge. It's still better than other demographic groups, right? So like where white counterparts, right, are voting almost like 50%, 56, 54% for Republican. And the same for Latinx communities. So the issue is, it gets turned into like, who's going to be electable? And now people are pointing the fingers at Black men because we know that Black women turn out to vote and support Black women candidates. And so the issue is looking at brothers like, what's going on with y'all? Are you going to support Black women candidates? And so there's this real conversation that I think needs to be had, and thankful that Black politicos are having this internally, that there is some Black men who won't support Black women candidates. That needs to be addressed. But it's also, right, how are messaging being packaged to Black men voters? And I think that Black women candidates do a good job of talking. That's what my research finds, that Black women do a good job of reaching out to Black communities writ large because of the shared marginalized experience. The other thing is, why is it the expectation that Black women candidates will only win if Black women will support them? It needs to be a more call in to say, white folks, Latinx folks, Asian Americans, you have good opportunities to support Black women candidates, you should as well.
Right. Like focusing on Black populations votes towards Black candidates is really ignoring a large, very large section of other voters that could also be supportive as well. I do want to ask you about these elected officials. Like once they are elected, can you share some examples, the impacts on policy made by recent Black female elected officials? How have they maybe changed policy in a way?
Well, I love this question because this is actually the part of my work that I'm the proudest of, is being able to make this plain to not just the discipline of political science, but to policymakers, to politicos. It's that it's so important to have diverse voices at the table because we have different policy outcomes, right? Because people have different lived experiences that they understand and see a problem and a solution to a problem in a unique way. And so some examples that I've published have been around having different state set-aside quotas for doing business with the state, right? So in my first book, Sitters in the State House, I talk about the state of Maryland used to have a policy for contractors who wanted to do business with the state that they could apply as either a minority or as a woman. And the Black women legislators were hearing from Black women constituents and other women of color constituents and saying, well, this is a problem. Like if you're being asked to choose between applying to do business with the state as either a Black person or as a woman, what if you're both? And the other members of the legislature that I spoke with, they saw this policy as not a big deal, right? They were like, oh, well, that gives this woman the opportunity to apply twice for this program. But it's an extra hurdle, right? That these women have to go and stand in line, you get the application, fill this at the time, right? They had to then fill it out and then hope to see if they're going to be picked up on one end. And if one of the quota businesses is filled, they're waiting on the other. But if there was a special set aside, right, for women of color or other people that could fit, it doesn't make sense to ask people to do the same thing twice. And so that was one of the big ones that was such an eye opening, that having Black women policymakers at the table, they were able to rectify and said, we're going to do away with these two quotas and then put them into one big pot. The other is another book that I'm working on now that has been really eye-opening for me to think about how Black women have been at the forefront of dealing with pandemic policies and issues stemming from COVID-19. And one of them has been around caregiving. And so we know that caregiving is feminized. It is one of those pink collar jobs, and oftentimes a low skill, low wage job. So thinking about healthcare workers that might come into your home, like an LPN might be taking care of an elderly person or someone who is disabled. These are oftentimes women who might be new immigrants to this country, and they are most likely Black and brown. And what was going on, and this is a research that's happening in the Maryland state legislature, the Black women legislators were telling me that they wanted to work with the Women's Caucus, the Latinx Caucus, and the Black Caucus to find ways to protect these women workers who were going into these homes to do this kind of care work since the pandemic. And some of them, right, are like, again, healthcare, others are childcare, some of that is elder care. And they saw this as an intimate problem because their sisters, their mothers, their aunts, their cousins, right, were doing this kind of work. And these other caucuses saw them as discrete issues, right? So is this an issue around, leveraging immigrant labor? Is this an issue around feminized work? Is this an issue around how Black people can be exploited in an under the table economy? The answer is yes, right? All of these things are true. These Black women who got together to show that these desperate kind of communities were being impacted, but weren't talking to each other. And the best way to write legislation was to have these groups come to the table, but listening to the voices of the Black women. But then what they needed was the power of these caucuses, right? So these women couldn't pass these bills all on their own. They needed the Black caucus, they needed the Latinx caucus, the Women's Caucus to come together with their membership and say, we support this legislation. And so it's so, because policy is made in these little kind of disparate groups that's really impacting a very targeted group that could be left out because they're seen as undeserving or unworthy, and it's not that many people by these larger groups. So again, right, that's what the Black women policymakers are bringing, that they're saying we need all these people to work together because this group that you might think the small subsection of the Black constituents or the women constituents are actually larger and need our voice here in Annapolis.
Absolutely. And it sounds like Black women's keen connection to their own communities and their original political participation that maybe stemmed from maybe community organizing, as we've seen with especially Representative Cori Bush. It really brings a unique perspective into policymaking. We talked a little bit about the high political participation rates of Black women. So what do you think maybe other groups that don't have high of a participation rate? Maybe you mentioned a lot about white voters not turning out for Democratic candidates or not turning out to vote as high rates as Black women. So what do you think other groups can learn from Black women's political participation?
Oh, Black women have been doing it for ourselves since day one, and that no one is going to save us. So we have to do it ourselves. And I think that's the difference, right? That other groups might see their connection to the state in a way that is more transactional or a way that is more institutionalized. Whereas Black women, in my research today, like my current research, but those that are serving in office or running for office, but even historical work, right? Things that I read and cite from people like Martha Jones, are showing that Black women have always taken matters into their own hands because they have to, right? There is no government official coming to say, hi, right? Like, what do you think would be a good policy? Would you like to run for office? Do you see, American democracy working out for you? If not, right, come on in and let's, figure it out together and try to change. That does not happen. So Black women say, all right, right, like I'm going to do this by myself. And so I think about, ancestors, women like Fannie Lou Hamer, who was given the tools to learn about voting, right? That there was outside members to her community who gave her the tools to think about voting. However, right, those outside activists did not shape her activism, right? She already had that in her to mobilize her community through song, through feeding people, through relating to people, understanding folks, right? And then putting pressure on the Democratic Party in Mississippi, then putting pressure, right, on the President of the United States to seat her, right? That was all her. The same way that Stacey Abrams, right, has called out the corrupt system in Georgia that has purged people from the rolls, that has diluted Black vote and Black voting strength, and then called people into the system to change it. There is for me, a very short line between women like Fannie Lou Hamer and Stacey Abrams. There's a thin line between people like Ida B. Wells and Latasha Brown, right? That these women are politically engaged and active because no one will save them. They have to save themselves, and they're doing so with the support and help of their community. And I think it's just a different orientation to politics that Black women have because we've had to have it, right? As being marginalized and excluded means that you can't sit back and wait for others. If you want to see a change, you have to be that change.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask, based on you talk to some organizations that are encouraging more Black women to run for office. Can you share some examples on how they have been doing this through their work?
Sure. So for the second book with Daniel Lemmy and I, we worked with the Black Women's PAC in Texas. And that was such an amazing, eye-opening experience. Again, Black women who noticed there was a dearth of Black women's support and leadership in the state of Texas and organized themselves. They form conferences. They have donor circles. They partner with researchers like me to help give them insights about larger themes, about what's happening in their communities, what's happening with them. And that's 100% grassroots on the ground, right? Like it's sisters helping sisters to get elected, to making connections and networks, giving people training that they need to be an effective legislator once they win, or to connect them to donors so that they can win because they have enough money in the campaign coffers to be able to sustain a general election. And mostly, right, it's a primary election for most Democrats, right? If you make it out the primary, you'll be able to win the general. Others are bigger and more nationally known, like Higher Heights, and that's run out of New York by Glenda Carr. And that is a national stage, right, of Higher Heights endorsing Black women candidates, working to get them elected. So doing things like phone banks, donations, social media strategies that really highlight how Black women can help and should help other Black women win elections. Another one is Win with Black Women, that's put on by Nadia E, who convenes a Sunday night off the record call, right? And it's women who show up in their personal capacity to talk about issues that impact Black women and have politicos come in and speak with us, and that Black women can share their grievances, their policy preferences. It's a place where people can air things out in love and then get directions on how to move forward. And so it's a very concerted community call to figure out, okay, how will Black women in their personal capacities be able to support other Black women who are running for office? And to be honest, right, like as a Black feminist, as a baby Black feminist, I dreamed of these spaces. And now, right, 20 years later, I'm 40 and I'm able to see these things and to be a part of them and to offer my expertise as a expert on legislators and Black women candidates. But then it also, as a Black girl, it just feels so good, right? Because it is, again, like this ethos of Black women and taking it on their own hands, forming these own organizations to do something. And they've worked, right? So because of these organizations like Sister SCOTUS, right? We have Ketanji Brown Jackson sitting on the Supreme Court. because of Win with Black Women, right? We have a Kamala Harris sitting right in the VP's seat, and there's a legacy of Black women who are trying to build up the next leaders, right? So it's women like Mignon Moore or Donna Brazil who are helping, or Leah Daughtry, right, who are helping to really teach and generate the next generation of Black women leaders, so that it's not power hoarding, right, but power sharing, to make sure that there will be more women that will come down the pipe who are able to help others.
You've mentioned a lot of Black women doing it for themselves, but also it's doing it for their own communities and sharing that expertise and experience that they have with other Black women as well, and creating this sort of community. So I appreciate you coming on this podcast and sharing your expertise with us and the people listening as well. And I do want to ask if you have any closing thoughts before we go.
I will share that in terms of Black women supporting Black women candidates, that is amazing. And I think that we can and will continue to do that. But the part that I want to put the call out is voting isn't enough. And in our communities, we often focus on voting. And it's good, right? We have to show up, we have to vote. But I would love to challenge the listeners to know Jargon, to think about more holistic ways to support candidates. So if you're able, and particularly Black women candidates and the communities that they represent, if you're able to donate money to good candidates, please do that. We know that campaign finance is the mother's milk of politics. And so your donation enables people to get their voices out there and heard, particularly in very expensive media markets. The other thing I'll note is, if you can't afford to donate, you can use your voice and your platform on social media. You can talk about why you're supporting a candidate. You can ask other people to donate, remind people to vote. You can do phone banking, right? Some things are small. Some things require a larger time commitment or a larger financial commitment. But I want people to think about engaging in politics much more broadly than just showing up on November 8th to vote. And that after the election cycle, hold those people accountable. Right? That if someone that you've elected isn't, behaving in the ways that you think that they should, isn't voting on the things that you think they should, isn't talking about the issues that you think they should, then call them up, talk to their office, right? Hold them accountable, show up at the city council meeting, show up at the state legislature, send your congressperson a letter. And these are all the things that we've learned from our Black feminist foremothers, right? They've done this all. They've paved the path for us. They've given us a roadmap to follow. And so I urge each and every one of your listeners to be like Mary Church Terrell. I urge everyone to be like a Mary McLeod Bethune or Ida B. Wells, to do this work that Black women have done for so long, and now to continue it into this next generation.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have our listeners be reminded of all the things that they can do beyond just showing up to a voting booth. So thank you so much for joining us on No Jargon. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It was a pleasure.
And thanks for listening. For more on Professor Nadia Brown's work, check out our show notes at scholars.org/No Jargon. No Jargon is the podcast of the Scholar Strategy Network, a nationwide organization that connects journalists, policymakers, and civic leaders with America's top researchers to improve policy and strengthen democracy. The producer of our show is Mandana Mosen-Sadagan. If you like the show, please subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your shows. You can give us feedback on Twitter at No Jargon Podcast or at our email address nojargon@scholars.org.